Imagine sailing across a vast ocean, arriving in a new world, and being handed power over entire communities. This wasn't a fantasy. It was the reality of the Spanish encomienda system. It was born in the early 1500s. The Spanish conquistadors carved out an empire in the Americas. The crown gave them a special grant, an encomienda. This wasn't ownership of people, but it was control over them. In exchange for protecting indigenous communities and converting them to Christianity, these settlers, called encomenderos, could demand labor and tribute gold, food, anything of value. It sounds almost civilized on paper, a paternal arrangement. But the reality was brutal. Indigenous men, women, and even children were forced into deadly labor. They toiled in treacherous silver mines, on sprawling plantations, and endless construction projects. They worked under the constant threat of violence for hours on end. This wasn't just forced labor. It was a system that shattered communities and families. Combined with the devastating European diseases like smallpox that swept through the Americas, the encomienda led to a demographic catastrophe. Millions perished within just a few decades, but not everyone was silent. A Spanish priest named Bartolomé de las Casas witnessed the horror firsthand. He saw the suffering and refused to look away. He began to write, arguing fiercely that indigenous people were not savages, but rational human beings with rights. His accounts sent shockwaves through Europe, sparking one of the first major debates on human rights in history. Activism pushed the Spanish crown to act. They passed new laws to limit the abuse and eventually end the hereditary nature of the encomiendas. However, laws passed in Spain were one thing. Enforcing them thousands of miles away was another. Colonial elites resisted, and the exploitation continued. By the late 1600s, the encomienda system officially faded, but the chains were simply replaced. New forms of forced labor, like the repartimento and debt peonage on large haciendas, emerged to keep indigenous populations in a cycle of poverty and coercion. The encomienda system exposes a dark paradox at the heart of colonial empires. The noble promise of civilization and salvation built on a foundation of exploitation and suffering. Its legacy is not just a chapter in a history book. It's etched into the social and economic inequalities that persist in Latin America today. It's a powerful reminder that history remembers systems not for their stated intentions, but for their real-world impact. Thanks for watching, and if you found this piece of history interesting, consider subscribing for more.